All right, here we go. Dang it.
All right, so let's get right into this. And as the website is focused on concealed carry, the questions are, obviously going to narrow into that field. So as we all know, the attacks last week in San Bernardino in California have been ruled an act of terrorism. How do you think, if at all, that changes the overall landscape of the country's safety? And do you feel that the country as a whole has a greater responsibility of being vigilant and aware of what's going on around them?
Well, listen, they win when we live in fear. So, there's a fine line that we need to walk here. I think the country, yes, as a whole, needs to be more vigilant. I spend hours every single day preaching to people in public sector, private sector, about preparedness. And if anybody has been following me as the sheriff in the last 50 months, um, they can see how we've beefed up our emergency management. We've beefed up our active shooter training. We've trained over 5,000 people in the last couple of years. Our training right now is just totally maxed out because I'm being inundated with requests from all over the Capital District, not just the county. And I will certainly go outside the county to train people in active shooter because I feel everybody has the right to be prepared and everybody should know how to take care of themselves. And so we will not deny anybody. As far as how has it changed the country? Listen, you're talking about bad people doing bad things, and it's not much different than when the SAFE Act was created. Bad people are still going to do bad things. There's bad people in the world, but again, we tell people to see something, say something. A lot of people always say, well, I didn't want to say anything because, I didn't want to get involved, or I didn't want to get the guy in trouble, or, I wasn't sure if it was true. That is for us to figure out. People need to be responsible and let us know, and communication is key.
I know that you guys did do the training for preparedness and everything, but the magnitude and the scope of it, I had no idea. That's fantastic. I absolutely
Yeah.
love seeing that, and it's something that people need to do more.
Yeah, listen, I will not deny anybody. If somebody calls me from 3 counties away and says, listen, we've got nobody, can you come and do it? We're sending a team to go do it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I will not deny anybody that right to be safe.
Yeah. Okay, so in a recent interview with WNYT on being prepared in the event of an active shooter scenario, you said that it was a matter of when it happens in the Albany area, not if.
Yes.
Do you feel this is an attitude that municipalities across the country should have to maybe get people thinking of what they do in a situation like this to better prepare?
Absolutely. Do you think the people over in San Bernardino were, ever thinking it was going to happen to them? What the heck is in San Bernardino, right? No offense to them, but I mean, what's the big draw there? Right here in Albany County, we got the Capitol seat. We got the governor's office 100 yards from my office. I still firmly stand behind my words that not if, but when it does occur, I want to make darn sure that the 305,000 people living in this county know what to do. I want to make sure that the other 250,000 people that are coming in to commute for the day and are basically that transient population that comes in and works and leaves, I want to make sure that they know what to do. So, yeah, it's key. And you know what, Brandon, the other part of this that people don't understand, a lot more goes into it than just a little bit of active shooter training. Here's my biggest nightmare, all right? It's December 20th, and there's 8,000 shoppers in the local malls. You're a local guy, so you know the malls around here.
Sure.
Last-minute shoppers such as myself, and some coward comes in wielding a long gun and starts to create carnage. So, all right, you've got 8,000 people trying to get the heck out of there, right? You've got all the highways are going to get congested and gridlocked. It's going to be mayhem and chaos. So now how do we get in there? So now we had to sit down and come up with a nice traffic study to make sure that roads are shut down to allow the hundreds of cops to get in there to protect the thousands of people. So there's a lot that goes into it, but that's one of my biggest nightmares. And that's why I think it's key that we constantly train at these malls, and we have early morning exercises at the malls on, well, you know what, this didn't work. We need to go this way. You know how many exits and entrances there are in these malls?
Sure.
I mean, hundreds of them, right?
Yeah.
So we got to make sure that we've got our A game on. We got to make sure that we know exactly where our command post is going. We know exactly who is taking that command. We know exactly who we need to check with. We know exactly who's responsible for shutting the roads down to make sure that we can get in. You know, I get criticized for having an MRAP in this county. Well, I'm damn proud of having that MRAP because I know in the event we have an active shooter here locally, I can use that MRAP to get my SWAT team in there. I can use that MRAP to get young lives, or if it's a school, or lives out of a mall, wherever the place may be, a doctor's office. I can get them out of there with that MRAP.
Yeah, it's what we're talking about. It's preparedness.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I bet that training, like the situation that you're giving with the mall, that has to be never ending and just.
That's my biggest nightmare and has been since I became sheriff. I'm like, son of a gun. Yeah. What happened at the end of December when everyone's trying to shop and some coward comes in there to either copycat or is in fact a radicalist? What happens? You know.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to be damn well prepared to handle.
The next one here is in line with the last question, with the recent interview. The run, hide, fight strategy is given as your recommendation. And
right. You know, there's a lot to this. Listen, I love the run, hide, fight scenario. I tell people to look at that. If you cannot by any way chance get somebody in there to do any formal training, just take a couple minutes and watch this video. At least just think about it, you know. And it's funny, I was up at Channel 6 the other day for an interview, and we were talking about it, and Channel 6 makes all their employees watch it as a prerequisite. I would rather get in there and have a hands-on and show them, but at least they're doing something, okay? You know, the run, if you can't run and you got to hide, you know, what we're telling them is barricade yourself in an office, block the doors, take your belt off, and if you have a door closer, wrap it around that so nobody can get in there. Mute your cell phone, whatever the case may be. If you've got to fight, well, you know what? Start looking in that room, but know ahead of time. Brandon, why do you have to wait to that day to know, hey, I'm sitting in my doctor's office right now, and if some coward comes in here to do an active shooter and I can't run or I can't hide, what would I use? What would I use? Would I use that fire extinguisher over there? Would I use my boss's golf club that he has sitting over here in the corner that he practices with? Would I use what would I use? Why do you have to wait till that day to know what weapon you would try to defend yourself if you had to? You know, people need to be prepared. You need to look ahead. You need to think, wow, if somebody comes in that door, where am I going to go? Can I get out that way? Or if they come that way, where do I go? You know, I mean, think ahead of time. And that's some of the things that we instill in people when we go and do a hands-on active shooter training. Think ahead. Be prepared. Don't wait till that day when the guy comes storming in, blowing the place up, and you're looking around for, my gosh, what am I going to do? Have that plan in place.
Sure. Okay. Great. And this is a great segue into the next question. So now we're going to get into a little more of the concealed carry aspect of it. So as a way of fighting back, again, they're face to face with whatever that threat is. What are your thoughts on citizens who carry concealed firearms? And we've seen instances where armed citizens have successfully intervened during what it was thought to be, attempted mass shootings. Do you feel they would be better prepared for an active shooter situation?
Listen, I have absolutely no issue with people carrying concealed. I have absolutely no issue at all with one exception. When people come out and tell everybody that are carrying, that have a concealed permit, I've had my concealed permit since the mid-'80s. Obviously, I'm law enforcement, so 9 times out of 10 I'm carrying. But many people have got their concealed permits, and their gun has been on a shelf collecting dust for years. And now, because of the craziness in this world, people feel the need to carry their gun more. Excellent. But I would encourage those people to receive some sort of training. Go out and shoot. Make sure you can shoot the target that you're aiming at. Make sure you can properly still handle that gun. Maybe things have changed over the years. Maybe you don't have the strength you used to have. Maybe you don't have the eyesight you used to have. So I firmly believe that if you're going to carry your weapon, you need to take your training to another level as well. You need to basically be a gunfighter. And, as corny as that sounds, if you're going to carry a gun, you need to be prepared to use that weapon. And listen, I know that people carrying guns can stop crimes. Absolutely. I believe in it. We are so far outnumbered as law enforcement. We need the help of civilians. I have no issue with people carrying a firearm concealed as long as they know how to use that firearm. I've had folks call me that have had their permits for years that haven't carried and will call me and say, hey, Sheriff, what do I do for more training,
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to do in this county now is I want to work with our active shooter team and see if we can offer maybe some weekends in the springtime and in the summertime where folks can come and get a little bit more of a certification and be able to, feel comfortable with that weapon. I mean, I know everybody wants to carry today. I mean, Brian Olson up here is selling guns left and right.
Oh, yeah.
But I also want you to be able to carry that weapon. If you're going to buy it and carry it, you better darn well know how to use it.
Okay, this next one is, you may have already answered it in part, but I'll just go over it. So in light of the recent events, the sheriff of Ulster County urged licensed concealed carry permit holders in his county to carry their firearms with them at all times and make sure that they are safe and proficient with their firearms. And since then, a handful of other sheriffs across the country have given similar statements. Would you offer a similar message to residents of Albany County?
Well, yes and no. Again, I don't want people out there to think that, we have succumbed to fear. I do want people to be safe, walk the streets of Albany County and feel safe. I think that is our job as law enforcement. With that said, if you are in fact going to carry, I firmly believe you need to know how to use that weapon. And that's one issue that I had. I don't have an issue with the sheriff making that statement, but I think each county, it's up to their sheriff to handle it how they feel is appropriate. And I just didn't feel that by me making that statement was going to do much for Albany County. What I mean by that is that most people that have their guns and they are trained with them and they're proficient with them are carrying them. I mean, everybody that I know that has them, I mean, I get calls all the time. I'm a member of a gun club. I know who's usually carrying. I want to avoid the layperson who has had his gun on the shelf collecting dust, grabbing that gun and going out because the sheriff said so. And that's what I'm fearful of. So I didn't really, I don't disagree with Sheriff in Barkham. I know Paul well, but I didn't think it would be appropriate for me to make that statement here in this county.
Do you feel that based on recent events, it gives people who already carry, maybe the casual carrier, do you think it gives them more of an obligation to carry their firearms?
I don't know if it gives them more of an obligation. I'm sure it gives them a sense of safety and security. Again, I'm all over this county.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, I've had people constantly. I had a fellow last night from Bern Middleburg line. He lives in South Bern. It's in Albany County, and he called and said, "Listen, I'm traveling to North Carolina next week. Is it legal for me to take my firearm? And what do I got to do?" I mean, more people are wanting to carry.
Yep.
And my conversation was similar to what I just had with you. I'm like, listen, you got to make sure that that's a free carry state, or you have a permit in that state, or you're going to get yourself in trouble. But B, make sure you're proficient with that gun. I mean, it's not. I can see some fellas grabbing their gun or some women grabbing their guns off the shelf and going out and pulling it out and dropping it or having it taken from them or something to that effect. And I'm fearful of that. I really am. I mean, again, my job is to worry about everybody in this county. That's what I do every day is I worry about keeping people safe and trying to be proactive. And I don't think by just telling everybody to grab their guns and go out is really the right thing to do without having that extra proficiency of handling the gun and shooting the gun and knowing how to respond. And if you're going to step up to use that gun, A, you want to make sure you're within your legal bounds to do it. And B, you also have to be somewhat familiar with, cover and concealment as well, as opposed to just standing out there and not blading your target and just leaving yourself a billboard to be shot. So there's a lot goes into it. Again, I'm hoping to have a course in place for spring and start to bring residents in. And I have no issue with people wanting to carry. I think you're right when you say people may feel obligated to carry right now to keep their fellow family and friends safe. But again, I want you to do it in a safe manner. That's all.
Let's run through a scenario quickly just to get your thoughts. And I know that there are a million different variations that could happen, but if an armed citizen chose or does fight back against a mass shooter, what would you recommend they do to distinguish themselves from the bad guy when police arrive to the scene?
Well, right off the bat, he needs to have that weapon holstered or on the ground, something. When the police get there, he needs to have his hand up screaming, who he is. And whether he's yelling, he's a lawful permit holder, or I have a permit, he needs to make sure. That's a very important key is when cops get there a minute after the shooting starts and there's two people shooting, we need to know who the heck they are. And we need to distinguish good from bad quickly. So as soon as law enforcement gets there, that fella needs to retreat with that weapon safely holstered or on the ground, something to that effect, with his hands in the air, and or he's not gonna come out of this too good. Now, again, like you said, there's a lot of variations to this, but that person needs to distinguish himself as a good guy quickly.
I touch on that a lot in articles because, not for necessarily a mass shooter situation, but there are cases where homeowners and they shot at someone who was coming to their house, and they're still holding the gun when the police get there, and maybe they get shot. And so hey,
it's no different than law enforcement. Off-duty law enforcement or plainclothes law enforcement. It's no different. I mean, they need to distinguish themselves quickly and safely.
Right. For everybody's safety. Yeah. So one of Concealed Nation's objectives is to promote responsible concealed carry, and that includes proper firearms training. So with citizens who carry concealed, how important do you feel that we're touching on this again, but how important do you feel is it that they receive proper training with the firearm that they carry, and how important is it that they regularly practice with the firearm?
I think it's vital. I think it's vital. And listen, law enforcement, we put our guys through countless hours of active shooter training. And listen, a couple of years ago, training in our department would be, once a year you go to the range, you drop 50, 100 rounds, clean your gun, you put it back in your holster, see you later. That was it. And we've changed that as well. What I do now is I take range officers constantly. I'll stick them on the range, and we'll have our cars rotate through, empty their magazines into a target, because cops need to be proficient as well. And, to go and shoot once every 365 days, to me, we're not doing ourselves any justice by that. And I think if we're gonna carry guns, we need to be proficient. We need to be at the range at least once a month, or at least once every 2 months, just constantly shooting. And it's muscle memory. I mean, anybody that carries those guns and shoots a lot, they know a lot of it is muscle memory. So we need to be on top of our game. With that said, I think on the civilian side, if you're going to carry, you need to know what the heck you're doing as well. You need to go to the range as often as you can and be proficient with that weapon. And if you're carrying a Smith 357 or a 45, and now all of a sudden you buy a Glock 45, well, that's a different weapon. You need to get out and shoot it, because it's going to shoot differently than your other gun. So, you need whatever gun you're going to carry, you better know how to use it, and you better be trained in it.
For anyone interested in concealed carry who doesn't currently have their permit or hasn't begun the application process, and in light of the number of mass shootings we have seen in our country, would you encourage those interested in Albany County to pursue their carry permits and training?
Absolutely. Again, there is private training that I know is available out there. I know people that have taken some additional training above and beyond the normal pistol permit orientation class, which to me, should be modified as well. I think that's a class that was created years ago and has never been changed, and I really think the whole process needs to be revamped. I also I encourage people to file for their pistol permit constantly, because it is, in fact, their right to carry that weapon. And if anybody in Albany County is interested, they can go right on our website. They can download everything, and we will process it for them. The problem that we have in our county, I should say, is more people get restricted permits than full carry permits. And I personally would like to see the whole process revamped. I've actually spoken to one of our senators, George Amador, about trying to come up with a new proposal which gives more people authorization to issue permits as opposed to just the sitting judge.
The last question, and this is, I kind of just threw this in here, switching gears just a little bit. You have been vocal in the past regarding your opposition to certain portions of the New York SAFE Act.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that any part of it, for example, the magazine limit of 7 rounds, could hinder a law-abiding citizen from effectively defending themselves?
Yeah, I think that, and I think the courts are starting to agree that, to tell us, some of the comments, first of all, that come from some of our electeds are foolish regarding magazine capacities. And, for somebody to make a comment, well, you don't need that many to kill a deer, is just, that's a foolish statement. And that's what everybody tries to attribute everything to, is just hunting. And other people don't realize, some people don't realize that some people just go out and they enjoy shooting those firearms. They enjoy target practicing. They do it, a family thing. I mean, I see more and more of that nowadays. I think regarding the SAFE Act, I firmly believe that it's just foolish legislation that was made to do nothing more than to placate people. Because the unfortunate part of that SAFE Act is that it gave a lot of people a false sense of security. And I'm bothered by that, because a lot of people that don't carry firearms all of a sudden see the SAFE Act and they're like, oh, finally, we're going to be safe. We're going to be gun-free. That is not what the SAFE Act is intended for. The SAFE Act doesn't address the issues that we have here in Albany County, which is an illegal handgun issue. Does nothing to address that. It really does, in fact, just basically harms the legal responsible gun owner. And as we started this conversation, I said, bad people are going to do bad things. Do you think the gangbanger out on the street with his illegal 9mm cares about the SAFE Act? Or does he care that it's now going to be, one level higher of a felony? They're not checking the penal law before they pull that trigger. So, unfortunately, I think that law enforcement should have been much more involved when this law was being crafted. But again, it was a knee-jerk reaction to a horrible act, and we're stuck dealing with it. Law enforcement had almost no input. Maybe the state police had a little bit of input, but the guys with the boots on the ground in the inner cities had no input. And it's bothersome to see some of our elected leaders jump on this every time that an incident occurs, that, hey, we've got the SAFE Act, or hey, we've got this. Well, in the places that have very strict gun control laws, it's not working. It's just not working. So I really think they need to take a deep look at this, a good, hard, long, deep look at this. And but unfortunately, I think that people are dug in a little bit, because now it's kind of more of a pride thing, and we're stuck with it. And hopefully sooner or later people will be able to realize that this is not it's not doing them any good. It's not keeping them safe. And I'd love to see the numbers for those who say it is.
Well, the last thing is just, is there anything else that you'd like to add overall?
No, the one thing that I'll touch on real quick, like I started to, is as a sitting sheriff, an elected sheriff by our constituents here in the county, and the person that looks into these backgrounds, the person that has the investigators out on the street doing the backgrounds on these pistol permits, doing the whole workup with mental health and motor vehicle and everything else, I think the sheriffs in the state of New York should have the issuing authority. And right now they're just the investigating authority, but I firmly believe that the elected sheriff, who's a constitutional officer, should have the authority to issue and authorize the carrying of firearms. And that's something that we're going to try to work for here in Albany County.
All right. Sheriff Apple, I appreciate your time very much. Thank you so much.
You got it. Take care.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.